Good evening and welcome to the public hearing for the North Andover Old Center Historic District Commission. Prior to starting the meeting, I'd like to read the following statement. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted via remote means in accordance with the applicable law. The public hearing of the Old Center Historic District Commission will be conducted via remote participation. Special information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandovermass.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting live may do so on their televisions by turning to Comcast Channel 8 or Verizon Channel 26 or online at www.northandovercam.org. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website via technological means a copy of the meeting. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite the best efforts, just to repeat, in the public would like to participate in the public hearings, please email your questions or comment prior to or during the meeting to haznoian@northandovermass.gov. The question/comment will be read during the proceedings and respond to accordingly. Okay, the meeting is now open. Can I have a motion to open the meeting?
I move to open the meeting. It's Leslie.
Thank you, Leslie. Need a second? Thank you,
Roger. I'll second that, Harry.
Thank you, Roger. Meeting's now open. Okay.
Harry, this is Lori. Do we have a quorum?
We have 5 people.
We do? Okay.
Four people. 4 people don't know. Wait, let me see. That's a good question. We need 5 for a quorum.
Right.
Oh, good point. Yep.
Besides you? You don't count?
I count, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't have 5.
We don't. Shoot.
Maybe others thought it was 6:30 as well.
Kathy Siska was here. Has she disappeared?
Yeah.
Oh, she was here. Yeah, maybe she'll sign back in.
Yeah, Kathy was on before.
We can't have the meeting without the quorum. Hold on. Once everything gets.
Kathy may be waiting to come back on at 6:30 now, after she heard that you were going to be delayed.
Yeah. Now, Mike Lenahan said he would be attending the meeting,
and he might be coming at 6:30 as well. It's only 6:23.
We can wait a few minutes. Ryan said he would not be attending the meeting, and I know Kim Berry, as you know,
Kim is not. Right.
So, and Marty said she was going to attend the meeting as well. Let's wait till 6:30 and then see if we get a quorum, because without a quorum, we can't go forward. That's correct.
Yeah, I think we should wait.
Yeah. All right. We can talk about non-public meeting things, but we have to wait. While we're waiting, we're going to have to reschedule Tuesday's meeting on the 22nd, because we are Monday the 21st is a federal holiday. And as a result of that being a federal holiday, we would need an additional day to post any agenda item. I thought we had Monday, so that we could post it tomorrow. But so the 48-hour rule will knock us out. So we'll have to reschedule that. I'll have Bernadette send out an email to see when we possibly can reschedule that. The only other up and coming meeting we have is on March 2nd, I believe, for an application that we have pending. I can say that we have currently 3 open continuances that we are waiting patiently, or maybe not as patient, for additional information to schedule based on what the applicants have committed to. So those are all in the queue. And I was hoping that we could use one of these meetings for some of those continuances, but none of that information has come forward and we can't go forward.
Harry, what was the agenda for the 22nd?
The agenda on the 22nd was a continuation of this meeting, but I also left it open, Leslie, for, it goes back and forth a little bit, Leslie, in terms of a couple of the applications are anxious, let's say, to have their meetings continued, but and they have unfortunately previously promised information within a very short time frame, and then they go silent and I don't see anything. So it was hopeful that I was going to get a continuation in there for the 22nd and just use the 48-hour rule to post. We have seen a change, though. This is not part of public meeting, but it's part of policy. Town council did review our current policy for legal notices, and we are no longer obligated to put legal notices in the newspaper, and we can, in fact, just use the current posting technology that's available, i.e., posting it on the town website, town calendar, in the town hall. Which then brings us a lot closer to a 14-day window in processing applications. So that's good news, actually, very good news that we're able to do that. That was based on an interpretation of Mass 40C and our ability to do that. But I'm hoping that we get a quorum because I wanted to at least kind of start the agenda items. I don't know if that answered your question, Leslie, but
it does. We questioned it before you came on as to what we were going to do on the 22nd. So that's why I was wondering.
Well, I had not planned on wanting to, and I told this to several of the other commission members as well. My plan was not to hold a vote tonight on any discussion, but was merely to begin the discussion on policy and on signage, as well as hopefully introduce some additional opportunities for the suggestion of putting something into the building permit process, which would have to be explored more in terms of with the building department themselves and their willingness to one, to allow us to do that, and B, whether or not that impacts their current bylaws or forms that they have that would require some additional work. So, but I strongly support the idea, and I think it's a good idea. So I was hoping that we could have some sort of hard time discussions of how we to move some of the policies forward. That was the intent. Because we never have enough time for that. We just, it always gets pushed to the back burner. And I know there's some great ideas that are coming out, and we should be working those ideas. So.
Hey, Harry, it's Mike. I just joined.
Mike, you made a quorum. Thank you. We can have the meeting. Thank you very much. All right, we have a quorum. So let's go on to the agenda item number 1, old and new business. I kind of just covered that, at least the old business. I want to take this opportunity too in the old and new business just to give you, or at least update the commission on sometimes additional information that gets, floated out there, if you will. But because it impacts the old center, there was a recent inquiry by a resident pertaining to Academy Road. And there was some sort of, how would I say, there was some conversations that were taking place between DPW planning and so forth that created a little bit of a controversy, if you will, or a question, if you will, about potential modifications of Academy Road to put in a formal sidewalk and a bike path. I did talk to the town planner, Gene Enright, who assured me that there was no current intent to make any modifications to Academy Road or to the bike path or to add a sidewalk at this time. So if anybody in the commission gets any kind of inquiry on that or questions on that, that's not something that right now the town is pursuing or has any intent of doing, just to put that behind us. So the next agenda item I have is we could take this either signage policy first, or unfortunately Kim Barry couldn't attend, and I know Kim is driving a lot of the energy behind the Old Center Historic District signage. She did pick up the ball and did a lot of work. So I'm not going to make a motion without her here, but it doesn't mean we can't have a conversation as to our desire to want to push the ball forward on this. So why don't we take that piece first and then go to the signage policy? And my intent on the signage policy is for us to have a conversation about signage. And that's a broad subject. So A, temporary signage, B, commercial signage, C, our current signage policy is really, emphatically states in there that people would use wooden signs painted with paint, which probably was how it in 1970s was available, right? Acrylic signage with transfers weren't exactly, I would say, mainstream back at the time the bylaws were put in place. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm certainly, we can open it up to other thoughts. But in order for us to, and I know, Leslie, at one time, the previous town manager had a little bit of extra discretionary funding somewhere that could have helped support signage. Unfortunately, we would have to put forth a proposal to CPA that either CPA could do in their discretionary funding if it wasn't enough, if it wasn't high enough, or we would have to put it on as a CPA item number to get approved at the town meeting. So I guess I'm opening it up to what people are thinking in terms of or their interest level is in continuing to push forward with putting historic district signage of welcome to the historic district. And we had previously discussed 5 areas, correct? So
Actually, it was 6, Harry, and then we introduced a 7th. 6 was what we talked about several years ago when we first started this.
Okay, so we kind of like list what we were talking in terms of where those entry points were. Mass Ave, right?
Right, Mass Ave,
Andover
Street, Johnson Street, Salem Street, Great Pond Road, and Osgood Street. Those are the 6.
Okay.
Then the other one is whether or not you put some kind of a notification on Academy Road / Court Street as to the end of the historic district there. So that would be a 7th sign if we decide to go that way.
Yeah. Okay.
Harry, this is Roger. I would be in favor of that 7th sign over in that location. I think that'd be an important location over by the cemetery.
Really? Okay.
My question with that one is, we have that property, the house that was moved onto the end of Court Street. Does the historic district property go past that house? Because it should definitely be included, and I don't know if it's in our map or not, because it wasn't there when we did our map initially.
Well, the property is, the property does extend. The historic district does extend, Leslie, to include that house, but further
Okay.
beyond that, there's roughly 6 acres Parsons Barnard house sits on, which includes now the Leland house, right?
Okay.
That house that we moved, or that was moved.
Uh-huh.
So the property line for the Parsons Barnard property continues behind the Leland house along Court Street.
Great.
So
that would be where to end it.
Yeah, it does not include the other side of the road, the other side of Court Street.
Right.
On the Parsons Barnard side.
So where does it end on the other side, at Kittredge, or does it include the next house?
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't recall off the top of my head. A good question. Hold on, I think I have the map right here. Hold on. I'm looking. Yeah, I have the map. Hold on.
Okay.
Please bear with me. Okay. So it does include the property adjacent to the Kittredge house, which is right at the three-way of Academy Road, where the old cemetery is.
Okay.
So the house that's next to Kittredge house is included, and then the next parcel down is not included.
Okay.
But it does include all of the land that's part of the Parsons Barnard house.
So because that's one way there, you were coming from Academy Road and going down Court Street, down the hill, that would just be a leaving the historic district sign, not an entering.
That's correct. That is correct.
The other signs are all going to be two-sided with entering and leaving.
Yeah, that is correct.
That's interesting. Okay. Why do they have to say leaving?
Because you're leaving.
Well, it's a boundary, so you'd want to know where it begins and ends, I would think. It's depending on the direction you're approaching the sign, what side you see of it.
Right, right. I've never seen one saying that you're leaving the historic district.
Yeah, Boxford, the ones, you know, and I don't want to, honestly, I don't want to steal Kim's thunder here. She's done a lot of hard work, or a lot of work in gathering up information. And I think next meeting she'll present what that looks like. She has photos of what that looks like. But what Boxford has done is they have those signs that go on, very nicely done, by the way. A lot of thought went into them, but they hang on a single wrought iron type post, and they look older, so they're off the ground, and they're hanging signs, and so you see that you're either entering and leaving, so you can see it. You know, it probably, if you're leaving, it depends which side you put it on, right? If you put it on the left side of the road or the right side of the road, whatever the opposite side is, you'll see that from the other side of the road. Yeah, that's how they've managed to delineate the perimeters of their district. But we could put a leaving, I'm not sure what we would put on the other side, though, Leslie.
Well, it could be blank, or you could put the seal of the town or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, it's only cars that go one way. People walk the other way, and bicyclists probably go the other way too.
That's true. That's true. The Boxford sign does have the seal of the town. It has, it goes across the top horizontally, but then it has a semicircle and the seal is there at the top of the sign. I have pictures of Hebron, New Hampshire, where my summer place is, and it's similar. It's just more of a long sign. Boxford sign is more of a horizontal sign. And the Hebron signs also say, thank you for coming, or something to that extent. But they do acknowledge that when you're exiting the historic district and when you're entering it.
My, in looking at the map, Leslie, and
Yeah.
I'm in favor. And does everybody have a copy of the map?
Not at my fingertips.
No,
So I know I'm saying, do you have
No.
one in your file somewhere?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't either.
You know what? I'll make sure, because it's a little odd because you have to request it because it's not on, as part of our bylaws, which it should be. What I'll do is I'll make sure that Bernadette gets us the most current, and I'll also send you the one I have is the official 1987 map that was approved by the town, and it doesn't show the new rotary, which has to be updated. The map has to be updated. Quite frankly, I'm not sure, how we are. If one was to, because we use the center lines of the road as the reference for making a determination of the boundaries of the district.
Mhm.
And I know in speaking with Gene, they were working on updating the map based on the new construction, particularly around the rotary area. Not that I think would change any of the outer boundaries, but it does change the reference boundary. But my point is, I'll send this out. I'm writing a note that everyone should have one for your files. If you don't, just have one easily. But when I look, Leslie, at the Salem/Johnson Street point,
Yes.
which tends to be a little bit of a congested point, if you will, right? Because we got a lot going on there. And,
Right.
Between the youth center signage, the fire station. So it does stop right after. Remember, we had this conversation about the Eagle Scout. Between part of the youth center and part of the basketball court / town property. So it's kind of funky because it was originally drawn when the old schoolhouse was there and not from the new building, right?
Right.
So in order to capture it, they would be literally less than 50 feet from each other, because it when you look at where Johnson Street starts, it's actually right at the youth center, and you look at where Salem Street starts, it's right on the back of the corner of Stevens Street. And
Okay.
so I don't know, with a sidewalk on the Stevens Street side, I don't know that we'll have any public access to putting the sign. You know what I'm saying? We'd have to put it on public. I would think DPW would have to put it on town-owned public land, right?
Right. But we definitely want to include that corner of Stevens Street because of that little yellow house that's there. That's in the district, correct?
Yes. the corner house on Stevens and Salem is in the district. That is correct.
But the next house up, the farmhouse, is not in the district?
No, that's in the district.
Oh, it is. So then that goes farther.
It goes up Salem Street all the way to the corner of Stevens Street. That's all in the district. Every one of those houses.
Okay, but on the other side of Stevens Street is that big
Yes.
farmhouse with barn, and that's not included, correct?
Correct. On across the street from Stevens Street is not included. That's
Okay.
correct. That's correct. That is correct. So I think we would have to, I think one of the next steps probably before the next meeting, right, is to maybe take some photos of where we would propose actually putting or placing the signage, right?
Yeah, if you can get us the maps, I can go and try and do that place, you know, stand at the edge of the map and take a picture there.
Yeah, because I mean, we're going to have 2 steps or 3 steps. One, we have to agree on what we want the signage to look like, right?
Right.
2, and I know Kim has contacted Boxford and got some preliminary quotations on cost if we go forward with that design, for example. We'd have to, you know, put the proposal together for CPA. So that's the second thing we'd have to do. And third, we'd have to meet with DPW to see, you know, from their perspective, if we had pictures of where we want to put it, whether they would be in agreement in placing a sign there.
That who would be in agreement? The town?
Yeah, DPW,
Okay.
because they would be the ones that would have to put it up.
Okay.
So the DPW would have to say yes.
They have to say okay. Yeah.
Or let's say that's, you know, that's public or that's town land that we can put it on, right?
Right.
So, like for example, along Osgood Street near where my house is, they've got plenty of land that they can work with. You know, when you look at, I mean, it gets a little touchy at Mass Ave, to be honest with you.
That's right.
Right, because the property, you know, on 100 Osgood, where we just allowed the fence, their boundary comes pretty close to the street. And Laurie, yours does too. So,
Yeah.
you know, so we can't encroach on private property. We'd have to find an access point that would make sense to be able to use, right?
Is the grass strip that goes between the road and the sidewalk, is that too narrow to put a sign on? I bet it would get knocked over by a plow or something.
Yeah, see, that's where the DPW needs to chime in.
Right.
The director of DPW, they got certain setbacks and certain requirements, which I'll be honest, I don't know. So we have to work with them to help establish that, where those positions and points may best be suited, right?
I think they go back 10 or 15 feet into basically what we all think of as our own property.
You might be right. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I'm okay with the 7 myself. Does anybody else have any either pro or cons on the 7 points to pursue and see how far we can go?
Kim said, she sent me a note and said that last fall when she looked into pricing this with a sign company, it was $475 for a 2-sided PVC sign, plus tax each.
Okay.
And then of course we need poles, and she didn't have a price on poles. So 7 signs is $3,325.
Yeah. So, you know, it's probably realistic to expect then if, though I don't want to say because, with COVID, I've noticed, and I had a conversation this afternoon, but, construction costs and materials because of all the issues have gone up crazy, right?
Yeah.
So but if we assume that those prices are within realm and the budget can be under 5,000, then CPA, I believe, has discretionary power to give us or vote in allowing certain small projects to move forward.
Huh.
I don't know what that threshold is. I don't want to state that publicly.
Yeah, we're not talking a lot of money unless the polls are outrageous, but
Yeah, they didn't look it to me because they look pretty
no.
straightforward polls.
Yeah,
I mean, they weren't.
Harry, the poles wouldn't be very expensive. They're not a lot. No.
Oh, so
The money will be in the signage.
What are
Yeah,
they made of? What are the poles made of? Is it wrought iron? Do you
I don't
know,
know.
Roger?
Yeah, the Boxford ones, I recall, they're black and they may be wrought iron. I didn't look at them closely when I'm driving, but
No, I didn't either.
The
But they
light
didn't look
poles
like
are
they're rough.
aluminum,
Yeah.
painted black to look like wrought iron. So
they
probably
could be,
cheap.
sure.
Yeah.
But those those aren't holding up well, Mike. The aluminum painted ones.
No, they're awful.
No,
No.
the lampposts look terrible.
Yeah, the dogs take care of them really well.
Oh, geez.
I have a question. When we're thinking about signage that you're leaving, so Cranberry Lane and Old Village Lane both leave they only enter the historic district when they're coming out of those two streets. But we're not talking legal issues here. We're just talking signage, right? So that we wouldn't need to put signs on those two streets. That
I wouldn't think so.
I wouldn't.
all right. So never mind.
I think it would be overkill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my personal opinion is I am more conservative in not wanting to have a lot of signage in the district, me personally, because I just think, the more you put, the less it captures the essence of the district.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
When they put up stop signs on the end of Cranberry Lane, I was like, wow, is that overkill or what? So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not an advocate of that. If anything, and I think several members were present when we talked with the selectmen about signage, and so that could be when we speak with DPW and invite the DPW to our meeting. I would like to entertain some of that conversation again, revisit it in terms of exemption from some of the sort of extraneous signage that they put in because the Massachusetts code book says put as many signs in as you can. We could have applied. We didn't at the time of the project, but we could have applied for exemption because it was a historic district. And then they evaluate it and say, these are the ones that minimally you have to have. And we could have curbed it back, but we didn't. So that's a conversation I think that's important to have. That's me, but I just think that's important to have with to explore, trying to balance it, if you will. So
It would be nice to know what is absolutely required and what doesn't have to be there. There are just driving around today, it's amazing the number of street signs there are.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you count just going from the corner of Osgood and Mass Ave and go down to the Rotary, if you just count the number of signs that on that one little stretch, prior to the project, that was probably 2 times the number of signs we had in the whole district, right?
Right.
Not to mention all the other new signs that we're adding. So, yeah, I think signage is, and I know in talking with Paul Hutchinson that the selectman and the town manager, or at least the selectman I know, there's an overabundance of signage period throughout the town, which it's just continuing to grow and grow and grow. So I just want to make sure it's balanced, make sure it's appropriate, and so forth. Because and this kind of goes across now, from all center signage to signage policy, right? We have had a request, which I've asked for that application to be put on hold until we have the signage policy in place to kind of standardize a little more. But the North Andover Improvement Society did provide a formal application of wanting to put signage to identify the pasture that's next to the old burying ground across from the Kittredge estate, and put a sign there to identify that pasture. It's a historic pasture. I'm not questioning the historic relevance of the pasture, but it's another sign, if you will. And so, just as an example, and this leads us a little into policy, and that's part of the reason I still wanted to have the meeting tonight without Kim. I prefer she was here, but meaning to begin the conversation for us to think about signage, because it's a big topic. If you do drive around Boxwood, which all of us do, right? They have some of the same signage on the pole, right? With the hanging sign is exact same, where they identify, a particular field or a particular, historic marker, and it's uniform. Okay. There has been, including Machine Shop Village and including the town, if you ask me what signage in 2022 looks like, it seems like everyone puts up, 2 7-inch square granite posts and puts a sign in between the granite posts. And that is the sort of standard that everybody's trying to use today, and including the proposal. And I'm not discussing the application, but as an example of what, is being proposed for putting in the field. I remember, for some members, they know who Peter Hornbeck is, some don't. But Peter was a well-known landscape architect, a preservation architect, who did many great things for this town as well. But I remember a conversation that he had about even putting granite around the common. I don't know if people remember that were part of the commission, about it introducing an urban element, right? Because once you put granite curbs, it becomes urbanized, and you lose that country sort of rolling, feel of transition between the road and the ground. The pushback was, well, it gives a good safety delineation between the sidewalk and cars, and it also allows cars to go in a much greater speed without fear, right? And it also provides an easier access for plowing and maintenance of the road. So that's a more utility aspect of it. But I remember the element, the architectural element of granite being more urban looking, and so I I'm not sure I personally think that that is soft enough for signage. I mean, certainly if you go up and down Academy Road, and look, there's several signs in front of the homes and so forth that are using granite posts. So I think it's a conversation. I think it's a discussion we should have as to what do we want it to look like? What is the feel of what we want it to look like? And what are the alternatives? What type of alternative do we want? Do we want to have markers? Do we want to delineate? Do we want to call out, certain key aspects of the historic district? So I'll open it up. I mean, it's not about my idea. It's just about, let's have a conversation.
I think when you do something more consistently and uniformly, then it makes sense. When you start doing all different kinds, then it doesn't. The Historical Society and the Parson Barnett House have matching signs that are part of the Essex County. Kathy might know better than me. Part of the Essex County design, and it makes them uniform. It makes them appear that they belong together. If we did signs, I think we should go after what Boxford did. If we did a sign on anything else, we should do it consistent with these entering and leaving signs, and not have a mishmash of all different designs.
Yeah. Harry, it's Kathy Siska.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Harry. In reference to the field that's between the first old burying ground and Kathy Stevens's house, I remember from the Historical Society, that was not a main pasture land. That was, and in fact, I think it was Carol Majahat. I had this talk with her, and she said that that was only used secondarily. That was not a main pasture for the Kittredge family, who had the cows across the street. And the only other thing I would say is, I remember when it was proposed to have sidewalks up Academy Road. And I mean, we could debate that, whether it was good or bad. The end result is that the selectmen agreed, and they didn't pursue having sidewalks. Well, I look at this proposed sign in the so-called, cow grazing field there as an interruption to what Academy Road is supposed to be. It's supposed to be one of the last, well, how can I say this? It's supposed to be an example, or it isn't an example, it really is, of what, Academy Road, a country road, this type of thing. And all of a sudden, to have a sign that all it says is, this is the cow field, I think that's a disruption of what Academy Road is supposed to stand for, the historic significance and everything. What's next? What are you going to have next? A sign across the street that says, this is the first cow field where they ate? I mean, that is my opinion. Really, that's my opinion of that. I think it's a distraction from Academy Road rather than adds to it. I think it's going to look like the horse is behind. What can I say? That's how I feel about that.
We can wait for the application. We're not going to decide that today. But the question is, though, Kathy, I appreciate your comment. The question is, if that's an example of a potential historic call out of a historical marker. And Boxford, whether it is or it isn't, and that application is something to go forward, we'll debate that once we have the application and we have the policy. But the question is really the way that Boxford decided. I'm not saying we have to follow suit. I'm not even suggesting we even need to adopt the policy. But their policy had been, if they deem a particular area significant, then putting a standard marker, as you said, is important on how that's approached. My question is more around the policy. It says, the effort in the precedence that's being in front of us today is a 2-post granite signage, right? You see it everywhere. We see it,
Yeah, I've seen them. Yep.
Yeah, well, to be quite honest, I just, on the Machine Shop Village side, we just approved granite post signage for St. Gregory's Church. It's out in front of St. Michael's Church. It's all along, the mill buildings. They've got granite posts and they put, acrylic signage between them. So it's not unique to the district. And we have representation today and precedence today that is the signage. And I'm not even debating whether or not it should or shouldn't continue. The question is, should it continue?
Harry, there's a real difference, though, between the old center Machine Shop Village and the granite may fit there and it may not fit at the old center because it's more rural.
I agree with you 100%. And I think the old center already has a standard of having large stones with a brass plaque somehow affixed to them. I think there's a number of them. The one in front of the old the North Parish Church down there right on the road,
right?
It's a large rock. The one in front of Marty Larson's old house, the Samuel Osgood, has a marker. The one behind the brick store is on a stone. So we could easily say that if they put it on a large stone, that's the standard we'd like to keep, perhaps.
Mike, I'm not disagreeing with the examples you gave. Okay, I'm not, and I'm not arguing for or against, but I have had conversations with several people on Academy Road. And if you look at the Loring House, for example, that has signage in the front between 2 granite posts, that those are actually antique granite posts. Yeah, they've been there before the current owner. I'm not going to name people, but the current owner who did replace the signage between the posts, but the posts were there. And there are several examples along Academy Road, up the road, in which they're using the granite. You look in front of the museum, they have their signage that we've got under application has 2 granite posts. I'm just saying, I think one could make an equal argument of precedence that we already have also. If you look in front of the a newer sign in front of the youth center, right? So all I'm saying is we've got different directions going because there is no policy. We don't have guidelines that says this is the way we would like it to be. This is what we think is appropriate. This is so we can provide some direction. Again, to Kim's, passion, which I do support. Of saying, the more we can help applicants in saying this is, the direction of appropriateness, it helps people in carving it out. I think secondarily, to Kathy's point, which markers could or couldn't be, appropriate to put an indication to? That's a secondary question. But the way that, again, I'm not advocating or trying. I'm just stating that the way that Boxford did it was they took this sign that we're going to consider for entry points, and they used that same signage, sometimes a little smaller post, not always the big post, but it's all standardized in terms of how they do it. So whether you're entering it, you're leaving it, you're calling out a marker, it's pretty much, I know I'm in that district. When I saw the signage for the field, it said this is so-and-so's field, I knew I was in the district because it was the same sign, and so I didn't have to say, well, why is that sign there? I knew that because, it's standardized.
Mm-hmm.
what I want to get to is some sort of standardization, if possible. Maybe there isn't. Maybe we have multiple signs. Maybe we say we take it on a case by case basis. Maybe we, I don't know. I mean, I want to hear what people say, though.
Maybe there's a choice A, B, or C, and depending on the usage of the particular piece of land.
I'm open to that too. I think that's certainly possible. I mean, I think, Roger, how do you handle that up at the academy? What is that? Do you have a policy up there, or I mean,
We
you
have,
have
yes,
something-
we definitely have a signage policy. Most definitely, Harry. Yeah, we have standards, sure.
And do you use wood, or do you use PVC? Do you use granite? How do you do those? Because I know you have a lot of signage, right?
Yeah, we use wood with metal post. Yep. Black metal post.
Wood signage
sign.
with metals posts. Is that what you
Yeah.
do?
Yep.
Yeah, you think it's possible you could take a photo
Oh, of course, sure. Be
of
more than
that
happy to.
and send it to Bernadette, and she'll upload it in the folder for the
Sure.
next meeting, so that we can. I'm curious because a lot goes into that. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm surprised. Not granite though, huh? You didn't go granite.
No granite.
Is that because of not because of cost, right? It's just
No.
Why?
I honestly don't know the answer to that, Harry. I'm not sure.
That's okay. But that's your policy though, right? You have a
Yep.
policy.
Yeah, we have. Yep. Any new
That's a-
signage or replacement signs.
But it all follows the same standardized policy.
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah, the sign I can think of right now is actually right on that I'll take a photo of. It's the sign that says Phillips Academy Incorporated 1778. It's right in front of the bell tower on Main Street.
Yeah.
Yep. I'll take a picture of that. Black post, blue sign with white lettering. I believe it's the color scheme. Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Harry, would we have to put that into our bylaws if we came up with a policy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and we have within our bylaws the ability to amend the bylaws and add policy into them, as long as we have to, as a group, we have to put a motion, we have to vote on it, we have to make similar to this meeting, it would have to be posted in the agenda, but from time to time we have the ability to make policy changes. Yeah.
But
we don't have to go to town meeting, do we, for that?
What I would do is, I'm a conservative person. I would probably run it by Suzanne, town attorney, to ensure that whatever language that we were considering would be okay for us to do at the commission level.
Good.
One thing that we should probably check on too is whether they're state roads or town roads, because I think Mass Ave is a state road.
It is.
And I don't know whether the state has to approve anything, but I know we ran into that when they were doing over the whole old center, the roadway project that was designated. And we were up in arms, as I remember, because the amount of signage that they put up along that side of the common is like 10 times what it was before. And it was that the state mandated that the signs have to go up.
Yeah.
Right.
Laurie, what do you think? Haven't heard Laurie.
Yeah, I tend to be in agreement with the uniformity of our signs. I definitely think, even just kind of thumbing through the bylaws in preparation for tonight, just to see what they say. I mean, there's definitely some antiquated parts. And I think that should really be our next focus, to tackle something big. But, all these little questions come up, like the state-owned road, the town-owned road. I think it's gonna be a longer process than we want it to be. But best start it soon, before they plan anything else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have to start it. I agree. And I think because signage, the reason I'm interested in making a policy change in the thing is because right now the signage is like almost, I hate to say it, but it's like a footnote in the exemptions, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And maybe it was okay in 1987 to be a footnote, because no one was going to be putting up major signage. I don't know, but we have dealt with and continue to deal with lots of signage issues, right? And so it shouldn't be an exemption in brackets, that says, if it's this, then this. I think we need to call it out. I think it should be called out as a separate line item, not as an exemption, but signage. And if we standardize, if that's where we end up and net out 1, 2, 3, whatever it be, then we should build that in. And when applicants are looking at signage, they should have some guidelines there. I think we need to provide that guideline. Now, with that, I can tell you this, that whatever we put in, we should put it in in concert with the building department. And Bernadette can lay testament to that, because they have a whole set of requirements that the building department has for signage. And on top of that, signage is also, I believe, in the zoning bylaws. So we have to kind of bring the three together so that the three work in concert, rather than, we have one opinion, then it has to go to another hurdle, then it goes to a third hurdle. Because Paul actually ends up fielding some of that, because it's not enough for us to just say it's okay, because it has to fall within the building department's requirement as well, in terms of overall size, in terms of position. So as an example, that sign that we passed for, that we allowed to be put on the railing, that we thought was good, for right downtown in the old center.
That knitting shop.
Yes, thank you. A knitting shop. Okay. There were some things in there that Paul had to make changes to, Leslie, that because they didn't line up with what the building departments needed and was required.
Huh.
And so I think it's good that we should probably get copies of those things, maybe. I can ask for copies. Bernadette, maybe you can help me with getting copies, if you don't mind. And we can get copies of those and put them into the file share folder for the next meeting, maybe from zoning and from the building department, to help us, and then putting together language, and once they're in there, you guys can play around with the language if you'd like to. I mean, that's fine. But we need to develop several points of what we want to do. I mean, and how we want to do it, because I think it's just going to continue. I just think it's going to continue.
It sounds to me like we need to really delineate the types of, have a section in there called signage, and then under signage, you're going to have commercial signage, street signage, open land signage, even house markers signage. If people are, when I moved here, I put a marker on the side of my house, and I wasn't even aware that I might not be able to do it. But I put a brass plaque on the side that says 1835. But people were talking about all of the houses in the old district getting those types of markers. So they should probably be standardized based on what we have in our bylaws.
I agree with that. I agree with that. And I think we also ought to do the same for banners and temporary signage. because, you know, interestingly enough, temporary signage, there's a couple of places, I think, you know, I think it was in the zoning bylaw, and their definition of length of time of temporary signage, our definition, and if you go to Machine Shop Village, their definition of temporary signage, all three of them are not the same. So it would be good to develop a uniform definition of what's temporary.
And I think we should add vehicle signage somewhere in there too, that's considered signage if people are parking Xfinity trucks on their front lawns, you know, for like the one across the street from me. It's a tenant that lives there, and he parks the thing out on the street every night.
Yep.
And the
Harry, if we do come up with a policy and then put it into our bylaws, can we retroactively go after people? I'm thinking of the ones, all the signage that's on the old red Hayscales building. Can we say this is now the policy and you're not in compliance, or are we too late for that? For us to regulate those ones, because
I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah,
That's a good question. I would have to ask town council on that. I don't know the answer
because we have several signs.
Well, my gut feeling, my gut feeling, Leslie, is on that. The example you're giving, is that we have a different issue on that signage. We have signage on that Hayscales building that's on there that has never been approved
and never been in compliance with anything.
This has never been in compliance with anything. We have jurisdiction on that, meaning retrospectively, today, right now, we can point to that and ask for that to be either an application or have them remove the signage. We can do that today.
So we could do that now.
Yeah, I mean, just as an example, I will give a Machine Shop Village example, not the signage, but you know, because it's such a vast district, Machine Shop Village, well over 200 plus properties. We get a lot more volume. Bernadette can attest to that. We get a lot more volume of activity down there. So we get to see a lot more of the examples of what happens down there. But we had an example of a homeowner there that actually bypassed the certificate of application process or certificate to alter and went ahead and made modifications to their property and did not make any attempt to provide the certificate. Now, in that instance, they also did not have a building permit issued, because a building permit would not be issued unless the certificate to alter, similar to how we have it here at the OCHDC. So there was no building permit, but yet the work was performed. We did talk with council about that, and we were going to proceed with issuance of a fine to the homeowner. But what is required, and I support what is required, is that we would notify the applicant or the owner of the non-compliance and write them a certified letter and put it on the agenda for them to appear in order to address the non-compliance, meaning give them an opportunity to fix what's not right, whatever that means. So In a case where we have this particular case, Leslie, what we would do is we would notify the owner or the store owner or whoever puts the sign up that they're in non-compliance and request that they file for an application for a certificate of appropriateness. At that time, we'll make a determination whether or not that signage is appropriate or not appropriate, or what appropriate would look like. That would
Okay.
be the best way to move forward with
These-
non-compliance.
These signs have been up for quite a while now.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Time
that
doesn't
raises
really matter.
That raises the question of enforcement, doesn't it? As to who
Well,
is it?
It does, Mike. It always raises the question of enforcement.
So who is responsible for going, sending that letter to them? Is that the town? Once we determine that it's breaking
it's
the
not
rule?
the town. It's not the town. If the bylaws are not being met, the enforcer becomes Paul or the town inspector. It's written in our bylaws.
I'm sorry. So who would send the letter?
Well, in
Buil-
this
building
particular
department.
case, yeah, the building department. The
Okay,
building
so that is
department.
the town. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we are too. We're the town too.
Well, but yeah, okay.
It doesn't come. It won't necessarily come from us. It'll come from Paul. Paul will make notification. And again, in support of Paul, in our current building department, they've been very supportive of both the Machine Shop Village and the Old Center in terms of this. So, in the example I gave you in Machine Shop Village, Paul, he's the one that personally contacted the homeowner and informed them. So we're working in concert with the building inspector.
It certainly makes it easier if the building inspector is the one. Just thinking of the instance across the street from us where they added parking spaces in their front lawn and that kind of thing. It's difficult for neighbors to bring it up, and just because we're on the district commission. But it would be great if we could notify the building department to send them a notice to say this has to be applied for. My personal opinion.
Yes, I think it's done in concert. It's done in concert. Which actually, that is one of the touch points that we have, is that Mass Ave property.
Yep.
I think another touch point is the duplex on Andover Street, and I think the third one, I had a third one. I wrote it down. Listen, I'm not as young as I used to be, but I had a third one as well. But I think, I think enforcement is written into our bylaws. I don't think it's something that we have historically. It's not something we have proactively pursued. And I do support town council, and I'm not trying to push back because of town council, but I do support us, trying to first work with applicants who are non-compliant with the bylaws to try to work out an amicable solution to these issues. I tended to get a little bit, let's just say, I got a little, I started to interpret it a little on a stricter side. I was ready to issue some fines. I was issued daily fines. So I did take a step back, Mike, and want to give people an opportunity to be compliant.
So what would you think would be the first step in starting a standardized process where we would start doing that? Should we craft a letter and give it to the building department and say, would this be sufficient to utilize, and then have in it the wording that says they have to apply to us and we would need to work it out?
Well, I think what would happen is, I don't know that it has to be, I thought about formal letters. I'm not sure. I think what we need to do is we have to identify the actual non-compliance of whatever non-compliance is happening, similar to what we did on Osgood Street with those windows as an example. And we bring it to the attention of the building department, specifically the building inspector, formally in an email asking, based on what we have in our bylaws, and we ask for notification be sent to the applicant to basically come in front of the commission. Because some of these non-compliances, interestingly enough, this is where we as a commission, I think, have to get some other alternative trigger for compliance in our bylaws. And we don't have that. And I honestly, I'm not sure how to put that in. So as an example, we have jurisdiction over architectural landscape elements. Anything technically above grade. So anything above a patio, walkway, brick, stone, whatever it is, but anything that's above grade requires architecturally a stone wall, brick wall, timber wall, pergola, whatever it is, requires our review and a certificate. Okay, skating ring that we have on Osgood Street, those require us to have oversight and issuance. The problem is that the trigger for a certificate of appropriateness is applying for a building permit. Now, granted, probably 90% plus, maybe 95% plus of all of our applications historically, right, have been windows, doors, additions, structural architectural elements that are part of the building. And those require hence a building permit. So that's a no-brainer. But these other items that don't necessarily require a building permit, let's look at an example, temporary signage being hung out. You don't need a building permit to put a temporary sign out. Mm-hmm. So what governs, when the clock starts, when the clock ends, what's the 90-day cycle? How is that being tracked, right? Because there's no requirement for that. There's no requirement for when you build, a stone wall or you add, a structure, on the property. So those parts of the bylaw, right now, what is the trigger other than, us having a conversation with the applicant or the applicant knowing that they should be doing that and coming forward? There isn't one. So we need something. We need something that tells the homeowner, right, that this is part of what you have to do. So I don't know. I've thought about it, but I don't have an answer yet. other than good faith.
Hmm.
And we don't want to be, I don't personally think we should be having to run around and just, you know, do it after the fact because we got non-compliance, because that's not what you want to be doing. You want this to be proactively done prior to. You want the conversation to happen before, not after.
So when we bought our house, our realtor was required to tell us that we were in the historic district and that we needed to look at the bylaws to understand what we could and couldn't do. So everybody that's bought a house in this district should be aware of that.
Yeah, but that doesn't always happen.
Right.
That's the bottom line. It doesn't always happen. And
But
if
the
it
legal-
happens, people don't always, you know, at the time. I think people are getting a lot more savvy. I will say that, Mike. I do get calls. I get calls, believe it or not. And I always take them. I get real estate brokers that will call me and say, you know, I've got somebody who's interested in the house. It's in the district or Machine Shop Village, and you know they're wondering what they can and can't do, and I really can't answer that question. And can you provide me any information? And I, you know, beyond the bylaws and pointing them to the websites, you know, I'll spend a half an hour with them in educating the broker as to, you know, what it is that, you know, isn't within the realm. I think that's important. I do. It takes my time. It takes a considerable amount of time. And they always say, well, thank you, because, you know, I really didn't know, and now I can talk to this potential buyer and let them know. I mean, I had a conversation last week with a potential buyer of, interestingly enough, right on Johnson Street there, the yellow house with the little picket fence in front of it next to the brook, you know, that can see the potential parking lot that's, you know, being proposed. You know, he was having a home inspection, and he was wondering, you know, like, if I buy this house and, you know, there's some issue in a stone wall and a stone foundation because of the brook, and he wants to know, you know, what am I going to be able to do or not do, and how does it work, and what's the process, and you know, it's beforehand. You know, here's a guy who's not even buying it and wants to know, you know, how's that all going to work. So I think there are groups of people that ask. The woman who just put the fence in, when her husband first moved here on 100 Osgood Street across from you, Laurie, she sent me an email right away. Hi, I'm new to the neighborhood. You know, my husband and I are, you know, we realize we're in the district and don't have anything planned, but would like to understand how the process works. Good question. It was a great question, you know, and, you know, I helped answer some questions for her. So I think there's more of it, but to your point, I don't think there's enough of it.
I think Lori's point of saying that we have to put it on our list of redoing the bylaws and then directing everybody to it and making sure that it's completely clear as far as we can get it. I think that would alleviate a lot of it. And then you can just point everybody in that direction and say, hey, by the way, you live in this district and this is the bylaws, and, you know, hopefully you're following them. I'll be on the rewrite committee. I'll put my hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you know, to that point though, you know, even people that know the bylaws, people have read the bylaws and studied the bylaws. You have to read them 4 or 5 times, Mike, to even understand what it means for the non-building permit pieces of the bylaw. And I think that's, I would agree with Laurie that is our job to try to rewrite that in a much clearer manner, to let people know that you're not off the hook if it's not a building permit.
I wonder if there are any towns that have done it. recently. It would be a good place to start to see if anybody's redone it.
Or if anybody's not used the building permit process as being the trigger.
And that's not infallible.
No. No. No, I mean,
Harry?
and wait, and 1 second, Kelly.
Yep.
I'll be honest, Mike. I think we are very fortunate today of the building inspector we have,
Yep.
because
The last one wasn't, so there's
Oh,
well, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna
oh,
throw
you don't
anybody.
have a good relationship with that man at all.
I'm
No, I
not
do
throwing
not.
anybody under the bus. I'm just saying we are
I
fortunate.
will.
We're fortunate.
I know
We
somebody
are
who will.
we are very fortunate that we have the support, because it takes a lot of his time as well, you know, and he's got probably 100 times more to do than you know, in applications throughout the town. He's constantly got things being fired at him. So, you know, we are fortunate that we have his support. We're fortunate we have community development support. We're fortunate we have Bernadette's support, who's on all the calls. So, you know, the commission is getting a lot of support. And because of that, I think we're able to, you know, do a lot more and be a lot more effective. But the rewriting and clarifying the segments that need, it's not just for us. It's for the homeowners. You know, I mean, I won't mention names, but you know, a lot of the applicants, you know, they would love to have more clarity and more direction too. So I think it's important. I think and it's not now just about. It's more about policy than it is about the what. It's not. We've evolved, and everybody on this commission has been part of that evolution. It's beyond, you know, is a 12 over 12 acceptable? You know, is divided light acceptable? Is, you know, what does the front door need to look like? It's beyond the architectural element. It's more about the how and the what. It's not about the actual element itself. You know, it's about, you know, just as an example on, you know, the current open application of 3 Great Pond Road, it's educating people as to which pieces of the information need to be provided. You know, it's beyond, trust me, you know, which I trust everybody, but it's not about trust. It's about providing. We've developed now, and you're all been part of this, good, bad, or indifferent. But our process of looking at applications, what we expect, what kind of supportive documentations, you know, pictures, tell us specifically what you're going to replace it with. We want the specifications of what you're replacing. Before it was, you know, yeah, I'm going to change the windows, and you know, I'm going to put in the same windows. It's that level of requirement now that we've you know, that we're demanding, that's improving the quality of what's happening in the district. And now I think we have to update the policy now to reflect that expectation. Kathy, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's all right. I just wanted to say, you got my email, Harry. I
Yes.
have to leave. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, that's
And
fine.
okay, we have the next meeting. What? It's February 22nd, right?
No. I made a mistake. Bernadette tried to catch me. Thank you, Bernadette. You know, she tries to cover and get everything. We need a 48-hour, Kathy, posting.
Okay.
I didn't realize. I didn't realize
Yeah.
Monday's a federal holiday. and town offices are closed. So we won't have the 48 hours. So Bernadette will reschedule and send out another notice. We do have the next meeting with an applicant for Andover Street. Please take a look at that application, please. That's part of the Stevens Coolidge on that historic duplex that they're trying to make into a maintenance shop.
Okay, so that's for March 2nd, right, Harry?
That's the March 2nd, and we'll
Okay.
have any continuances. And then Bernadette, if you don't mind scheduling another commission-only meeting, and then we'll continue this conversation. But please, if anybody wants to put anything into the share folder, anybody has any ideas, in terms of starting an outline on the policy, let's try to put some meat to the bone and try to get this done.
Okay. Good night then, Harry, and good night to you all. And we'll we'll hear you all on March 2nd. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you,
Night,
Kathy.
Kathy.
Yep. All righty. Bye-bye now.
All right, we still
Harry?
have a quorum, but we don't need to keep going.
Harry, I
but-
just have a quick question.
Yes.
How do we put things into the share folder? Do we send them to you and you decide if that's where they should go? I would rather clear it through you first.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. If you
Okay.
send them to me, I'll send them to Bernadette. That's fine.
Okay, great.
That'll work. And then we'll do it that way. And then, like Roger, if you take a picture, send it to me, and then I'll have Bernadette put it in there.
That sounds fine. Yep.
If you take pictures, Leslie, of I'll make sure Bernadette and I think there's a new map, and she'll send the new map. I'll send her a copy of the scan map. We'll send that to everybody, so everybody has a copy of that. But let's, even if I think the place we got to start, and whoever would like to start putting things, I think these subheadings would, Mike, I think you had a lot of good ones there, breaking down signage, breaking down, application. I mean, I think that's exactly how we got to start to look at it and fill in the information. I think that's, what we think is the right direction to go.
All right.
Any closing thoughts? Is this helpful? Is this people have positive energy on this? I mean, is this positive?
It's a lot to deal with.
Yeah.
Harry, this is Lori. I'm actually thinking there has to be somebody that knows a little more about this, whether it's somebody who has recently redone their bylaws, or I don't know if somebody from Historic New England could give us some pointers. I just pulled up even Concord, Mass, their Historic District Commission's bylaws. I mean, it seems to be a lot more detailed and kind of like pointing to what Mike said. There's a write-up on everything, sign support, lighting, etc. And then what the applicant would need to apply. The scale drawing, photographs, materials, samples, etc. So I think, we don't have to recreate the wheel, but it would be a lot of legwork. I'd be happy to kind of feel around. I have some contacts in other towns.
Who I could reach out? I can reach out to. Good. That's a good suggestion.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
So, Laurie, why don't I reach out to, I'm old. I forget things now. I just don't remember. But the head of Mass Historic,
Yeah.
I know him. He works directly for Galvin.
Mhm.
And so he wanted to put a roundtable together of all of the historic districts. So he's responsible. He actually helped us craft the Machine Shop Village bylaws for the town.
Okay.
And so he is probably, from a state perspective, he knows the most, and he has the most contacts as well. And he's a really great guy. And if we ask him to attend the meeting and help us, he will.
That would be great.
That's
So
a
what-
great idea. Yeah.
I'll send him an email and ask him if that's something that he might help support for us.
Good idea.
Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds great.
I'm going to write a note and I'm going to do it. So
I think there's other things also that we're not even anticipating that are on the horizon. I know even the Mass Save program, just basically proposed a new outlook, and the stretch energy code for buildings is changing. Basically, they're incentivizing a lot of heat pumps, and how is that something that we would be dealing with in our historic district? I know my house, I was thinking, well, if we were to put an air source heat pump in our house, there would be a huge unit. I mean, two big units really, and they'd all be visible from public
Yep.
way.
Yep.
Is that something that, would apply? So hopefully they can shine some light on those things as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And that was part of his impetus to put together the roundtable, if you will. We are one of the, along with Concord, and there's like 7 or 8 of the oldest Massachusetts historic districts. North Andover was one of the first to also put a historic district in. But that was part of the reasoning for the roundtable, was to then, help field common issues and problems that are sort of surfacing throughout the Commonwealth. And that was a way for us to share some creative ways that they're being tackled. So, for example, and then I'll cut it, but I know when we first started looking, Mike, I remember you reached out, and somebody else on the commission also reached out. I don't know, Leslie, maybe you. But remember when we were working with the North Parish? I know, Roger, you brought a lot of information from the Andover South Parish when they were putting the solar panels onto the church.
Yeah.
And that was a huge issue, Laurie. And, fortunately for North Andover, and I say this, fortunately, we had someone who had the foresight to add, dish antennas and solar collectors back in the late 80s to our bylaws. But many, I think we're one of the only historic districts that has it in our bylaw. But most of the other historic districts, because Mike, you reached out to, like, you had an email thread with about 4 or 5 of them. They all wish they did, but they didn't, and they were totally unprotected in terms of being able to chime in with any kind of oversight in terms of how solar collectors were being placed on historic buildings. So, that's the type of thing that the Commonwealth is actually looking at, saying, what's happening, and what do they need to do to help support what's happening out there in terms of the policy changes. So I don't think it's an easy path forward. I don't. But let me ask him. I mean, he's a great guy. He's a super guy, and always willing to help. But I don't want to say too much, and then maybe he's too busy now. I don't know.
I'm on the Galvin website, and there's a whole list of workshops for local communities to participate in. There's one on February 24th about administering local historic districts and design review. So they've put stuff together here. It looks kind of interesting. I'm going to click away here after we get off.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I mean, that sounds like a very good workshop. Maybe that's something worth attending. I'm in agreement. I mean, Galvin himself, he has been one of the strongest supporters of historic districts that the state has. He's phenomenal. His office, phenomenal. That's why I said a request came in at the time. I didn't have the ability to respond to that at the time. I was not chairperson. But the request came in by the state that said, there's this major restructuring of the historic district via our common, that project, right? And the request was, you know, do you, the North Andover, want to submit any potential, you know, waivers and exceptions because it's a historic district? We had that option. You know, at the time, DPW brushed it off, pushed it to the side, and said, "No, we've got to go to the state codes, and that's it. And we're not going to put a request in for modifications." But we had an op. I mean, the state allows for us to do those things. So you know, it's a lot of it is about how much energy we have, not just the commission but the town, to want to fight for preservation. You know, the town has to want to fight for preservation. It can't be 9 people.
I just registered for it on February 24th.
Yeah, I might attend that myself.
I can.
Thanks for sharing that. Why don't, if you don't mind shooting out the link, that'd be good.
Yeah, I'll send it to everybody.
Yeah. But Laurie, your point is well taken. I think your point is well taken.
Harry, Roger here. I've got a hard stop at 8 o'clock, just to give you a heads up.
I think we're done, Roger. We just need a
Okay.
motion to end, and then we'll end.
Well, I'd be more than happy to make a motion to end the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Second.
I'll second it, Leslie.
Thank you. I hope everybody found this conversation productive. I mean, it's a lot
Yes,
of
much so.
it's a lot of work to go forward, but you have to start the conversation. All right, guys, we'll talk to you on March 2nd.
Thank you, Harry.
Thank you,
Bye,
Harry.
everyone.
Thanks a
Good
lot.
night.
Bye-bye.